Hey guys, it's Maddie, and today I'll be reviewing Remember Yesterday by Pintip Dunn. This is the sequel to Forget Tomorrow, which I have done a review on, and I will link it somewhere on the screen so you can watch it if you are interested. I would recommend watching that first before this review because I don't know if this review will have any spoilers because this is the sequel to the first book. So if you are interested in this series, please check out my review and you'll know more about it yet, but if you have read the first book and want to read the second book and know if it is any good, then just keep on watching this video. So Remember Yesterday takes off 10 years after where Forget Tomorrow left off. This book does switch point of views from Callie to Jessa. This book is all through Jessa's perspective, which is Callie's little sister. And this book is about her living in this world where future memory exists and is still a problem. And she is trying to stop the discovery of future memory from happening. She is also partnering up with her longtime enemy, Tanner, who has been a scientist since he was 6 years old. And Jessa really doesn't like him at first, but they start working together to take down the terrible man at Dresden, who is trying to discover future memory, which is something that they don't want to happen. And I'm going to leave it at that. I know I'm being very vague with this summary, but I feel like this book has so many points in it that are spoilers, so I'm trying to keep the summary just very vague for you guys. If you want a more detailed summary, then look it up on Goodreads, but for now, that's all I'm going to say about the summary of this book. I loved the plot in this book. This plot deals with more time travel than the first book does, and I love books that deal with time travel so much. The time travel parts in this book were confusing at times though, because it deals with how the past affects the future, how the future affects the past, how the past affects the present. It was just like this whole puzzle of how different time affects different times, like past and present. It was just kind of confusing at times, but I eventually was able to wrap my head around it and understand it, because at first I was just like, this is really confusing, but it was still really cool how just the time travel part of this worked. I felt like there was a lot more time travel in this book than the first book, which I really enjoyed. So the time travel part of this book is probably my favorite part of this book because I'm such a fan of books with time travel. I just think they're so interesting. And I think this book was so well paced throughout the whole thing. I don't think I had any problems with the ending at all. It wasn't too fast paced. It was just perfect. So I just loved the pacing of this book a lot, and I liked how this book really had a build up throughout the whole first and second act, and then at the climax the build up really paid off. There was a huge payoff, and I just really appreciated that because there's nothing worse than a book that builds something up so much and then it's just like anticlimactic. So I really liked how this book really had a good payoff in the end. The characters in this book were great. I loved Jessa, and when I heard that this book was going to be told in her point of view, I was so excited because I really loved her in Forget Tomorrow. She was so lovable and sweet, and I was just so excited to hear her point of view in the second book, which is weird because normally I don't like it when a series will switch point of views in the second book, but when I heard how she was going to be the narrator for Remember Yesterday, I didn't mind it at all, and I wasn't disappointed at all. I really loved her point of view. Her and Callie are alike in some ways, but still in some ways they are also kind of different. Like, you can totally tell there's a difference in their voice. I think Jessa is a little bit more weaker than Callie is. I think Callie is more of a stronger character. Jessa is a very vulnerable character, so there are some differences in that aspect between them. They are also similar because they are twin sisters, so I just enjoyed her character. I felt like her character grew so much because this book does take 10 years later than where Forget Tomorrow ended, so her character developed so much from the beginning of this book because she's now 16 years old, when in Forget Tomorrow she was 6. So she really grew a lot, and she didn't just show signs of character development in the beginning of the book, but all the way through the end. And I just fell even more in love with her, and I'm just so glad we got a book that is told in her point of view because it was really interesting. And then the second character I have to mention is Tanner. He is a scientist. He's been a scientist since he was 6 years old, and he has been trained and pressured to try to figure out the discovery of future memory. And Jessa doesn't really like him because he does certain tests where he tests on animals, and she is not a fan of that, and she's just all around just not a fan of his personality at all. But eventually they start working together, as I mentioned before, to take down the chairwoman, and they grow closer, and they discover this kind of bond between them. I didn't like Tanner at first, of course, because he seemed like a big jerk, but he did grow on me a lot. He's one of those characters that really start off as a jerk, but then you start to understand them more, and they become more acceptable because they grow and they learn how to treat others better. And I just really enjoyed his character towards the very end of this book. Not in the beginning, but he really just started to grow on me. I mentioned before in my review of Forget Tomorrow how much I love how Pintip Dunn develops romance. I thought the romance in this was no different. I thought it was so well developed, and I enjoyed every second of it. And this book deals with my favorite romance trope of all time, which is the hate to love type of romance where two characters initially just don't like each other, they don't get along, and then they grow to love each other. That was the romance in this book. It was exactly like that, so of course I fell for it because that's just my favorite romance trope of all time. And I just really like these two characters together. I think they worked well together. They really understood each other a lot, and they were able to help each other out positively by being encouraging to each other. So I just thought the romance was so cute, and it's just so cool to see Jessa fall in love, because in Forget Tomorrow she was only 6 years old, and so it's just really cool to see her grow and to fall in love in this book. I just love that aspect of it, how we just got to see her grow, not just with falling in love, but with so many things. I just really enjoyed that part of it. And the writing in this book was amazing. I think the writing in Forget Tomorrow was spot on, and it was just as good in this book. Pintip Dunn is just really good at writing in a way that just really flows, and it sounds poetic, and it just sounds like so beautiful and effortless, and I loved how it just flowed nicely and was easy to read. So the writing in this book is, along with the fact that it's about time travel, is another thing that I really love about it, and is probably one of my favorite things about this book. I just became really addicted to this writing style, and I think it flows so nicely, and it's just so beautiful. And of course I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed every single second of it, and I love how it didn't give me second book syndrome. I thought it was just as good as the first book was, and I would just highly recommend this series. And I would recommend to you, if you have read the first book, haven't gotten to the second book, you should probably get to it, because I think this book was just as good as the first one. And I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. So that was my review for Remember Yesterday. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos and reviews, and I'll be back really soon. Bye!